The year had begun like any other, with people busy in their usual routines, not expecting anything unusual to happen. Around the world, scientists were tracking familiar patterns in the sky, studying stars, and monitoring satellites. Everything felt calm, almost predictable. But that sense of normal life changed in a single moment so quietly at first that only a few people even noticed. It started with a strange signal picked up by a deep space listening station in a quiet desert. The signal didn't sound like anything natural. It was steady, too organized, almost like a message written in a language no one understood. The team on duty stared at the screens, confused. They checked their machines again and again, convinced. It had to be some kind of glitch. But the signal stayed, repeating the same pattern, as if it knew someone was watching. One of the researchers, a quiet and thoughtful scientist known for studying unusual space data, listened carefully. For years, this researcher had been called overly imaginative for suggesting that something might someday try to contact Earth. But now, hearing the rhythm of the signal, there was no feeling of excitement, only a strange heaviness, like something important but frightening had arrived. Within an hour, the signal spread to stations across the globe. It wasn't just hitting one region or one country. It was reaching the entire planet. Every observatory, every satellite network, and every listening array reported the exact same thing. A single repeating pattern echoing from somewhere close. To Jupiter. Emergency meetings started immediately. Scientists, government officials, and communication experts were called in regardless of time zones or sleep schedules. People who had never spoken before were suddenly linked together in a massive online conference that felt more like a global heartbeat than a meeting. Everyone asked the same question, the one no one knew how to answer. Is this really what we think it is? Soon more data arrived, this time from long-range telescopes. A shadow had appeared near the orbit of Jupiter. At first it looked like a strange cloud or a cluster of dark objects. But when the image was sharpened, people saw outlines, shapes, a pattern too symmetrical to be natural. A formation of massive ships, dark as night, positioned like a silent army, waiting for the moment to reveal itself. One of the analysts whispered the first words that captured what they were seeing. "It's an armada." The term spread quickly, repeated from room to room, from country to country, until even the news channels took it up. The world now knew there was something out there, something organized, something purposeful, something watching. The message they sent next changed. Everything. It wasn't spoken in any human language. There was no voice, no sound. Instead, people all over the world saw the same thing appear on screens. A simple line of translated text created by decoding patterns in the signal. The message was short, but the meaning was unmistakable. Earth must surrender. For several seconds, no one reacted. It felt unreal, almost like a joke or a mistake. How could something so enormous, so unbelievable, demand something so absolute? But the message repeated again, with new details. Not only had they been watching Earth, they had planned this arrival for a long time. Their ships had hidden behind Jupiter's shadow, waiting until they were ready. Governments began to panic. Some leaders tried to calm their people, claiming everything was under control. Others froze, unable to process the weight of what was happening. A few even refused to believe the message was real, calling it a hoax. But the images of the ships silenced those doubts quickly. Tens of thousands of dark, silent forms drifting in perfect formation couldn't be the work of any human group. Around the world, people reacted in different ways. Some stayed glued to the news, unable to look away. Others rushed to stores, grabbing supplies, unsure of what they were preparing for. Some gathered with their families, trying to stay close in case something happened. In cities, Traffic surged as people hurried home. Schools closed early. Air travel was paused. The whole world felt uneasy, as if time itself had stopped moving naturally. Meanwhile, teams of experts worked day and night to understand the message better. The careful astrophysicist who had first recognized the pattern became a key figure in these discussions. This person's calmness and ability to think clearly under stress made them a natural guide for the scientific efforts. They spent long hours studying the direction of the signal, comparing data from telescopes, and mapping the fleet's formation. One chilling discovery stood out. The path of the fleet suggested they hadn't come from a random part of space. Their approach was too smooth, too intentional. It looked like they had been tracking Earth for decades, maybe even longer. The idea that Earth had been watched so closely made everyone uneasy. Even more unsettling was the size of the ships. Each one was large enough to hold entire cities. Some were shaped like long, dark spears, others like enormous floating disks. None of them emitted any light. They absorbed it, blending into space like a moving shadow. Someone on the analysis team gave them a name that would soon be repeated everywhere: the Black Armada. Despite the fear spreading globally, people tried to keep their routines. Families still woke up, made breakfast, and whispered encouragement to each other. Workers still headed to their workplaces, though many moved slower, glancing at the sky as if expecting something to appear. Children asked their parents questions that adults struggled to answer. Everyone wanted to trust that things would somehow turn out fine. The world space agencies joined forces to track every movement of the Armada. In the first few days, the fleet stayed completely still, holding its position near Jupiter. Some people hoped this meant the message was only a warning, that nothing more would happen. Others believed the silence before action was part of a larger plan. Still, there was a growing sense that Earth had very little time to decide how to respond. One of the biggest debates happened behind closed doors. Should Earth respond to the message? Should humans try to negotiate? Or would answering only make the situation worse? No one knew what these beings wanted beyond the word surrender. Surrender to what? Under whose control? What would happen if Earth refused? Meanwhile, the astrophysicist kept studying the original signal. Something in it felt too layered, too complex, as if the message contained more than what the translation had revealed. After long nights of trying to break down the patterns, a new discovery came to light. The signal had faint traces of other data information that didn't match anything known on Earth. It hinted at civilizations far beyond Earth's system, places that had been contacted long before humans entered space. This raised a troubling question. Had the Black Armada done this before? And if so, what had happened to the others? More data soon confirmed the worst fears. Several star systems showed signs of unusual destruction, scattered debris, missing planets, or energy signatures that looked unnatural. Though the information was incomplete, it suggested that the Armada had traveled to different worlds, and none of those worlds remained the same afterward. Still, no clear proof showed what exactly had happened there, and experts avoided jumping to conclusions. The world was already anxious. Adding guesses about past destruction would only spark more fear, but ordinary people already felt uneasy. They wondered why the Armada had come now, why they wanted Earth specifically, and what would happen if humanity didn't agree to their demands. Social media filled with debates, theories, and hopeful messages from people trying to stay strong. A quiet moment arrived when the astrophysicist stood before a group of global leaders and spoke simply. We cannot ignore this. They have planned their arrival for a very long time. We must prepare for every possibility. Nothing in the tone was dramatic. It was calm, almost gentle, but the meaning behind the words was heavy. That simple message pushed countries toward An uneasy cooperation. Old disagreements were suddenly less important. Everyone sensed that humanity had entered a new chapter 1, where Earth was no longer alone, but also no longer in control of its own fate, not as the days passed. The Black Armada continued to drift silently near Jupiter, never moving closer, never responding to Earth's attempts at communication. Their stillness made everything feel even more unsettling, like the calm before a storm that no one could predict. People around the world waited, hoping for a sign that the threat would fade away, that life could return to normal. But deep down, everyone sensed the truth. The arrival of the Black Armada was only the beginning. The days after the first message from the Black Armada felt unreal. It was as if the whole world had taken a deep breath and was still holding it, waiting for something to happen. Every news channel showed the same dark fleet floating near Jupiter. Every country felt the same pressure, the same worry, the same fear that no one wanted to say aloud. It wasn't just one nation's problem. It wasn't something that could be handled quietly. This was the kind of moment that forced the world to change, whether it was ready or not. Leaders from all over the world met again and again online, in secret rooms, and sometimes even in hurried hallways between meetings. They were tired, stressed, and unsure what to do. Some wanted to negotiate. Some believed ignoring the message might be safer. Others thought Earth should show strength, but no one knew what strength even meant against something as enormous as the Armada. Slowly, a new idea began to take shape. If Earth was going to face something so massive, something not from this world, then everyone needed to stand together. No single country had enough knowledge, technology, or resources to handle it alone. It didn't matter who had past disagreements or old rivalries. None of that mattered now. Humans had to think as one group, not as different nations with one goal: protect their home god. So, after many late-night talks, arguments, and uneasy compromises, the world agreed to form something new. It was called the Earth Defense Coalition. People simply called it the Coalition, as if the name had always existed. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't smooth. Some countries felt nervous joining. Some wanted more control. But eventually everyone realized the same thing. Standing together was the only real choice. The coalition set up a central operations center in a quiet region far away from crowded cities. It wasn't a fancy place, just a group of connected buildings with large screens, communication rooms, and long tables where experts from every corner of the planet sat side by side. Engineers, scientists, planners, pilots, communication specialists, mathematicians, and analysts all worked together, many meeting each other for the first time. There was no space for big egos or power struggles. Everyone understood the situation. Everyone understood the stakes. The researcher who had first recognized the alien signal became one of the coalition's key advisors. Many people trusted this scientist's calm, thoughtful nature. It helped steady the room during stressful moments. Sometimes, the scientist stood in front of a wall of screens, explaining new discoveries about the Armada's movement or about the strange patterns hidden inside the transmission. Other times, the scientist worked quietly in a corner, analyzing data late into the night. Engineers began designing new defense systems as fast as they could. They studied old plans that had been abandoned years ago, ideas once considered unrealistic. Suddenly, nothing seemed too unrealistic anymore. They combined satellite data, experimental energy research, and even old papers written by scientists who had dreamed of advanced space technology. Workshops and research labs buzzed with activity. Machines hummed, screens flickered. People wrote notes on giant boards and walls. Coffee cups piled up on desks. No one slept much. They didn't want to. Sleep felt like wasted time. A group of young engineers created a stronger, protective shield that used particles from the upper atmosphere. Another team designed improved propulsion systems for spacecraft. There were also teams working on communication methods in case Earth needed to send a peaceful message back to the Armada, or in case the Armada sent something else. Even people outside of science and engineering found ways to help. Volunteers helped organize supplies. Artists created calm, hopeful messages to share online so people wouldn't panic. Teachers created simple videos explaining what was happening to children in a gentle, non-frightening way. Communities across the world collected resources, prepared shelters, and checked on elderly neighbors. For a little while, something unexpected happened. The world felt strangely united, not because everything was fine, but because everyone had the same fear and the same hope. People understood each other in a way they never had before. However, not everything was peaceful inside the coalition. There were disagreements about the best approach. Some experts believed Earth should respond to the Armada's message right away, showing cooperation. Others worried that responding without understanding the full meaning might be dangerous. What if the Armada misunderstood the reply? What if responding made Earth look weak? One afternoon, while the Coalition Council discussed these concerns, new information arrived. The Armada had shifted its position very slightly. It wasn't an attack, and it wasn't a rush toward Earth. It was just a small movement, almost like they were adjusting their formation. But even that tiny change caused the room to go silent. The message was clear. The Armada was still watching. That evening, the Central Operations Center felt unusually quiet. People walked slower. Conversations were softer. The researcher returned to analyzing the old signal again, trying to find clues that had been missed before. Something about the message still felt incomplete, as if only a part of it had been understood. Hours passed. Most people had left for a short rest, but a few stayed behind, unable to stop working. The researcher continued studying line after line of data. Finally, just as the first hint of morning light appeared outside, a discovery surfaced. Hidden deep in the signal were faint patterns that didn't match anything humans had ever recorded before. They looked like traces of communication from other star systems, as if the Armada's message had once been sent to many worlds, not just Earth. If these patterns were real, it meant something important. Earth was not the first world the Armada had contacted. There were others before them. Maybe many. A researcher hesitated before sharing the information. The world was already anxious, and sharing this too quickly could spark more fear. But hiding the truth wasn't an option either. So, during the morning briefing, the researcher explained everything in simple words. The room listened quietly. No one panicked, but they all felt a heavier weight settle on their shoulders. They now knew the Armada's arrival was part of something much larger, something that stretched beyond Earth and beyond the solar system. After the meeting, the coalition's leadership gathered again. They made a difficult decision. Earth had to prepare for every possible outcome, peaceful or otherwise. Preparation didn't mean expecting harm. It meant being ready, calm, and responsible. It meant protecting the billions of people who trusted them. Scientists, engineers, and pilots were brought into new training programs. Workshops were updated. New communication stations were built. Space agencies launched probes to capture clearer images of the Armada, hoping to understand their intentions better. One of the most remarkable things was how ordinary people responded. Instead of falling apart, communities became stronger. People helped one another, shared food, and offered comfort. Many said things like, "If the world is changing, we'll face it together." That simple attitude created a sense of hope even in uncertain times. Back in the Coalition Center, the researcher worked on decoding the deeper layers of the Armada's signal. Some patterns seemed to describe energy fields. Others resembled shapes or diagrams. A few looked like information about different star systems, but it was hard to be certain. Still, one thing became clearer with each passing day. The Armada had not come randomly. There was purpose behind their arrival, and Earth had to understand that purpose as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the coalition continued strengthening their defenses, not in a dramatic way, but carefully and responsibly. They built systems meant to protect people, not harm anyone else. They created new communication channels in case peaceful contact became possible. They set up global alerts that could reach every phone and every device on the planet in seconds. And all the while, the Black Armada stayed near Jupiter, silent and unmoving, like an enormous shadow waiting for a response. As the days passed, people around the world felt many emotions: fear, curiosity, hope, confusion. But beneath all of that, there was a shared determination. Humanity had faced challenges before. It had rebuilt after disasters. It had survived difficult times. And now, even though the situation was far more unusual than anything in history, people still believed they could find a way through it. No one knew what the Armada wanted beyond the word surrender. No one knew if peace was possible or if something else was coming. But they knew one thing for certain: the world was no longer divided. It was one community, thinking, planning, and hoping together. This unity was the most powerful thing Earth had, and it was the reason people believed the story wasn't over yet. The days ahead would be difficult, but they would also be defining. The world had stepped into a new chapter, and everyone was learning how to stand together in the face of something that felt bigger than anything humanity had ever known. The Black Armada had been silent for many days, almost too silent. Their giant, dark shapes continued to circle near Jupiter, like shadows frozen in space. People on Earth watched the news every morning, hoping for an update, hoping for a sign, hoping for anything that made sense. But most days, nothing changed. No movement, no message, no explanation. Inside the Earth Defense Coalition Center, people worked nonstop. Even the smallest change in data created a wave of activity. Every shift of light, every strange energy reading, every tiny movement from the Armada made the experts sit up and start working again. No one knew what would happen next, and that uncertainty made the air feel heavy. One afternoon, the quiet tension broke. A sudden alert went off inside the operations room. At first, it was only a soft sound, but it was enough to make everyone turn toward the main screen. The Black Armada had begun to move. The movement wasn't fast. It wasn't dramatic, but it was clear and purposeful. The fleet adjusted its entire formation, like an orchestra preparing to play. The ships shifted into neat, curved lines that looked almost ceremonial. It didn't look like an attack. It looked more like a message without words. The room fell. Completely silent. The researcher who had spent many sleepless nights studying the alien patterns moved closer to the screens. Eyes studied every detail, every shift in shape, every new signal that came through. The coalition leaders gathered around, trying to read meaning from the silent movement. Soon, space monitors detected something else. A small beam of energy, thin and focused, reached across space. It wasn't aimed at Earth. It wasn't aimed at any satellite. It simply drifted near the edge of the Armada's formation. As if testing something, scientists worked quickly to decode the new reading. For hours they studied the beam, ran tests, and compared it to past signals. Finally, their findings appeared on the screen. The Armada was scanning Earth's defenses. The realization sent a tense wave through the room. It wasn't hostile by itself, but it wasn't comforting either. It meant the Armada was preparing for something. It meant they wanted to know exactly what Earth was capable of. People around the world reacted in different ways. Some became more afraid, thinking the scan meant danger. Others believed it could be part of a peaceful approach, like a visitor checking if a place was safe to enter. The truth was, no one knew. And when humans don't know, their imagination fills the empty space. That evening, the coalition held one of its longest meetings yet. The leaders sat around a wide table, some leaning forward with concern, others leaning back with exhaustion. Engineers shared updates about defense systems being built. Communication specialists explained new attempts to send peaceful signals. Analysts showed maps of the Armada's formation, pointing out patterns that might be meaningful. And something unexpected happened. A quiet, calm voice from the back of the room suggested a new idea. It came from a planner who had been mostly silent during previous meetings. This planner believed Earth should build one ship designed not for defense, but for observation and communication. A ship that could safely move closer to the Armada, gather information, and possibly send messages in a more direct way. The room became thoughtful. Some leaders liked the idea immediately. Others worried it was too risky. But almost everyone agreed on one thing. They needed more information, and they couldn't just sit and wait forever. So the coalition approved the plan. Over the next weeks, teams worked day and night to build the special ship. It wasn't large, but it was fast and had advanced shielding. It carried tools for scanning, tools for communication, and equipment to detect even the smallest energy signals. People from many countries helped design it, each adding their own expertise. Meanwhile, Earth-weighted families tried to hold on to normal routines. Children still went to school. People still went to work. Stores still opened in the morning and closed at night. But behind those daily actions, everyone felt the same quiet worry. Sometimes, people stood on rooftops or in open fields at night, watching the sky as if expecting the Armada to suddenly appear above them. At the coalition center, the researcher continued analyzing the first message from the Armada. Days passed without new discoveries, but the researcher refused to give up. On one of those long nights, something finally clicked. A hidden part of the signal revealed a series of faint numbers coordinates, perhaps, or references to other locations in space. None of the locations matched known stars. They looked like places far beyond anything humans had explored. The researcher shared the discovery the next morning. The room reacted with quiet surprise. The new data meant the Armada likely had a long history of travel, connecting with worlds far outside Earth's reach. But it also meant Earth might not be the only planet waiting for answers. As the special observation ship neared completion, the coalition selected a team of experienced crew members. These people weren't chosen for strength or skill alone. They were chosen because they could stay calm, think clearly, and work together under pressure. One of them was a calm, steady pilot whose ability to remain composed had impressed everyone. Another member was a communication expert known for creative problem-solving. Yet another was a scientist who had a natural talent for understanding unfamiliar patterns. When the ship was finally ready, the world watched the launch. It wasn't a dramatic event. There were no cheering crowds, no loud music, just a quiet hope that the mission could bring clarity. The ship lifted slowly and rose faster and faster until it vanished into the sky, leaving a soft light trail behind. People across the world held their breath. Hours passed, then days. The ship traveled safely past the moon, then farther into deep space. As it moved closer to the Armada, it slowed down, taking careful measurements. The crew talked to the coalition every few hours, sharing updates in calm, steady voices. Then one day, the ship received something strange. A new signal. It wasn't the same as the first message. It wasn't a warning or a demand. It wasn't even something threatening. It was more like a melody made of energy patterns, soft, rhythmic, almost pleasant. The crew recorded it and sent it back to Earth immediately. Scientists were amazed. This signal felt different, almost like a greeting. It didn't contain any human words, but it didn't feel aggressive. It felt like a door, slightly open, inviting someone to understand. The crew grew hopeful. Then, something unexpected happened. One section of the Black Armada slowly turned toward the observation ship. Not the whole fleet, just a small part of it. A few of the giant dark ships shifted their angle, glowing faintly around the edges, as if acknowledging the humans' presence. The observation ship's sensors lit up with new readings. Voices on. Earth grew excited and anxious at the same time. Cameras zoomed in, capturing the moment in crisp detail. For the first time, it looked like the Armada was responding, not with words, but with movement. The ships didn't approach. They didn't threaten. They simply turned, almost like someone turning their head to look more closely. Inside the observation ship, the crew felt a mixture of awe and nervousness. Even though the Armada remained miles away, the sight of those enormous dark structures was overwhelming. It was like staring at something ancient and powerful, something that had crossed distances humans could only dream of. Back on Earth, the Coalition studied every detail of the new signal. They played the soft energy pattern again and again, trying to decode its meaning. Some believed it was a friendly gesture. Others said it might simply be an acknowledgement. But the most important part was that it wasn't a threat. For the first time since the Armada arrived, the message felt open, not closed. As the observation ship drifted carefully near the Armada's outer range, the crew noticed something else. A faint glow inside one of the ships. Not bright, not sudden, just a soft, gentle light pulsing like a heartbeat. It wasn't frightening. It was strangely calming. The crew recorded everything and prepared to head back toward Earth. The mission had been a success, more successful than anyone expected. They didn't have all the answers, but they had something new. The sense that communication might be possible. On Earth, the new signal brought a wave of cautious hope. People started to feel less alone. It didn't erase fear, but it softened it. The world began to believe that maybe, just maybe, the situation wouldn't end in conflict. Still, no one knew what the Armada wanted. No one knew if the word surrender meant something different in their language, or perhaps something symbolic. And no one knew what the Armada would do next. But one thing was certain. The silence had been broken. A new kind of communication had begun, and Earth was stepping into a moment that felt both fragile and full of possibility. The next chapter was approaching, and the world waited again, this time not only with fear, but with hope. The crew of the observation ship returned to Earth with more questions than answers, but also with something rare: genuine hope. For weeks the world had lived under a shadow, unsure whether the Black Armada would speak again or make a sudden move. Now, after receiving that gentle, almost musical signal, people finally felt that the situation might not be completely hopeless. Inside the Earth Defense Coalition Center, the atmosphere had changed. People were still tense, still tired, still carrying the heavy pressure of responsibility. But the tone was different. There were small smiles again. People shared quieter conversations, their voices softer, their expressions less fearful. Even a tiny bit of hope can shift the mood of a room. And this hope spread quickly. The researcher, who had studied the alien signals since the beginning, continued examining the new energy pattern. Day by day, more details were revealed. The melody-like signal didn't contain words, but it had structure, like a language made of rhythm and light. It wasn't random. It felt intentional. The researcher believed it might be the Armada's way of saying, "We hear you. We see your reply." Still, there was something else hidden in the signal, something that didn't match the rest. A faint, pulsing pattern that seemed almost like a second message layered under the first. It wasn't threatening, but it was unusual. The researcher spent long nights trying to decode it, filling pages with notes and diagrams. Sometimes the lines blurred together from exhaustion, but the scientist kept going. Something about the pattern felt important, like a key waiting to be turned. Meanwhile, Earth continued strengthening its defenses, not because they expected conflict, but because the future was still uncertain. The coalition believed that being prepared was not a sign of hostility, but a sign of responsibility. No one wanted fear to guide decisions. Instead, they wanted calm preparation and clear thinking. Engineering teams worked steadily on a new system, designed to protect Earth from large-scale energy pulses. Communication specialists created a network that could send peaceful signals across the solar system faster and more clearly. Medical experts prepared for the possibility of psychological stress if humans ever interacted directly with beings from another world. Every group, no matter their role, contributed in their own way. During this time, the observation ship continued to monitor the Armada from a safe distance. The crew kept their voices calm during every update, though sometimes small hints of awe slipped through. They described how the Armada's large, dark ship seemed to shift colors slightly when touched by sunlight, almost like the surface of deep water. They explained how the faint glow seen inside one of the ships continued to pulse gently, like a rhythmic breath. Back on Earth, the coalition wanted to take one step further, something bold but careful. They decided to attempt a deeper connection with the Armada, not through words, but through patterns. The researcher and communication specialists worked together to create a new signal made entirely of gentle tones and soft waves of light. The pattern was built to show peaceful intention, curiosity, and willingness to understand. The signal was sent in the direction of the Armada. Then the world waited again. Hours passed. No reply. A day passed. Still nothing. People tried to remain hopeful, but uncertainty returned like a quiet fog settling over the planet. Maybe the Armada had decided not to respond. Maybe the first musical signal had been a one-time gesture. Then, 2 days after Earth sent the new pattern, something unexpected happened. A large portion of the Armada shifted again, not toward Earth, not in a threatening way, but in a slow, graceful arc, like an invitation. The formation opened slightly, creating a wide, curved gap in the middle. It was subtle, almost delicate, but to trained eyes, it was clear. The Armada wanted Earth to look closer. The observation ship received a new transmission. This time, the energy was brighter, more complex. The pattern wasn't musical. It was something else, shapes made of frequencies, like symbols drawn with light. The crew carefully recorded it and sent it to Earth immediately. The coalition room filled with people hurrying to their stations. Engineers, analysts, translators, scientists, leaders everyone wanted to see. The shapes were unlike anything humans had ever tried to interpret. Some looked like spirals. Some resembled lines that crossed at gentle angles. Others moved like tiny streams of light, shifting direction as if trying to tell a story. The researcher studied the symbols for hours, then days. Slowly, something became clearer. These weren't just symbols, they were maps. Or at least, something similar to maps. The spirals represented distant locations. The lines showed paths. The shifting lights pointed toward movement, connection, traveled out. It was a record of places the Armada had visited. The realization brought a mix of amazement and concern. The Armada had traveled farther than humans could imagine, through regions of space humans had never named. But along with this awe came another question. What had happened to the worlds they visited? Earth had no proof of anything harmful, but the question lingered quietly in everyone's mind. One evening, while the researcher was alone in the operations room, staring at the glowing symbols, a deeper understanding clicked into place. Faint, pulsing pattern, hidden under the first musical message, matched one of the shapes in the new transmission. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a demand. It was a location. a distant point far beyond human exploration. Something important was there, something the Armada wanted Earth to understand. The researcher immediately shared the discovery. The coalition leaders gathered again, this time with a look of focused determination. They believed the Armada might be guiding them toward knowledge, not harm. But they also knew they needed answers directly from the source dot, so they made a bold decision. Earth would send a small team on a mission to move closer to the Armada's central ship. Not to enter, not to confront, just to get near enough to. Send a direct communication pulse aligned to the symbols. The observation ship was upgraded with extra shielding and given new equipment designed for close-range scanning. The crew prepared carefully, checking every system twice. They weren't afraid, but they felt the weight of the moment. They knew they were stepping into the unknown. When the ship approached the Armada's central vessel, something remarkable happened. The giant ship responded with a soft glow, faint but unmistakable. It didn't move closer. It didn't make any sudden shift. It simply illuminated, as if acknowledging the visitors. The crew sent the encoded pulse with the matching pattern. Then they waited, floating quietly near the massive ship, feeling tiny and overwhelmed, but strangely peaceful. Minutes passed. Then a new pattern came through, slow, gentle, almost thoughtful. The energy wasn't loud or bright. It felt careful, like someone choosing their words very slowly. The pattern translated into something simple. We hear you. It wasn't written in human language. It was interpreted through rhythm, light, and timing. But the meaning was unmistakable. The crew sat quietly, letting the moment sink in. Earth wasn't alone in the conversation anymore. The door between worlds had opened a little wider. Back home, the coalition shared the message with the world. People cried with relief, smiled with wonder, or simply sat in silence, amazed that an alien fleet had answered in such a gentle way. Still, even with this connection, one question remained unanswered. What did the Armada truly want? The researcher believed the answer was connected to the distant location shown in the symbols. Something out there far beyond Earth's reach was important to the Armada, important enough that they had traveled across the galaxy to guide another world toward understanding. Weeks passed as Earth continued studying the symbols. More signals were exchanged, soft, careful gestures of curiosity and respect. A slow relationship was forming, built not on words, but on patience. And even though Earth still didn't know the full truth, the fear that once filled the world had changed into something else: cautious wonder, fragile trust, and the feeling that humanity was standing at the edge of something extraordinary. The future was still unclear, but one thing was certain: the most important moment was yet to come. The weeks that followed were some of the busiest in human history. Every day, new information arrived from the observation ship. New symbols were decoded, and new theories were discussed in long conversations that often lasted until sunrise. People were tired, but they were also excited. A feeling of fear had almost disappeared. What replaced it was curiosity, deep, powerful curiosity. The distant location shown in the Armada symbols continued to draw attention. Scientists ran calculations again and again, using every tool available, trying to understand what made that place so important. The area was beyond anything humans had explored. It would take generations for normal spacecraft to reach it. Even the fastest human-made technology couldn't get close. So the question grew louder. If humans couldn't reach that place, why did the Armada show it? One morning, as sunlight flooded the Coalition Center, the researchers stared at the giant display showing the spirals and shifting lines from the alien message. Something felt different that day. Maybe it was the way the light hit the screen. Maybe it was just a sudden spark of clarity, but a new idea took shape. What if the symbol wasn't just a place? What if it was an invitation? Over the next hours, The researcher went through every signal the Armada had sent, comparing patterns and timing. Slowly, the thought became stronger. The Armada wasn't just giving information. They were guiding Earth toward something. Not physically, but in understanding. It was as if they were preparing humans for a truth, step by step, without rushing, without forcing. The researchers shared this theory with the coalition leaders. They listened carefully, their expressions serious but hopeful. After a long discussion, they agreed that the Armada's messages didn't feel like warnings or threats. They felt like teaching. Still, there were limits to how much humans could learn from a distance. The coalition needed a way to communicate more clearly, more directly. So they began planning something bold, Earth's first attempt at a close range. Visual contact. This didn't mean boarding the Armada's ship or doing anything unsafe. The idea was simple. Send a small, unmanned module close enough to project a light pattern, similar to the way the Armada communicated. It would carry no weapons, no mechanical arms, just a sphere of smooth metal filled with lights, sensors, and peaceful signals. The world watched as the observation ship prepared the module. Engineers checked every connection 3 times. They tested the lights, making sure the patterns were gentle and calm. Even from inside the ship, the module looked almost like a glowing star resting quietly in a dock. When the moment came to release it, the crew took a slow breath. The module drifted away, a tiny spark moving toward one of the Armada's massive ships. Earth held its breath with it. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, the surface of the alien ship shimmered, almost like the reflection of water in moonlight. A soft glow spread across it, delicate and smooth, as if answering the module's presence. The module activated its light pattern. 3 slow pulses. A pause. A soft wave of color. The pattern repeated. The Armada's ship responded with a matching glow, slightly different each time, like someone slowly learning a new rhythm. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't fully coordinated. But it was clear. They were trying. The crew inside the observation ship cheered quietly, not loudly, but with pure relief. Back on Earth, people felt the same joy. For the first time in history, humans were not just observing something from another world, they were communicating, even if only through light. But the real surprise came minutes later. The Armada sent another message. Not through the large ship this time, but through a thin beam of soft blue light that touched the module gently. Inside the beam was a new pattern, this one more complex, more detailed, almost like a message layered inside a message dot. It showed the same distant location. But now there was something else beside it, a symbol that resembled a curved shape, almost like a shield or a protective layer. The shape was repeated several times, as if trying to emphasize something. The researchers on Earth worked nonstop to decode it. After long hours, they formed a new theory. The distant location wasn't just important, it was dangerous. Not dangerous in a dramatic or frightening way, but dangerous in a natural, cosmic sense. Something in that region was unstable. Not made by life, not caused by a threat, but something like a natural phenomenon unexplored, unpredictable, and possibly harmful to anything that came near it. So why show it to Earth? Why guide humans to this knowledge? Days later, something became clearer. Maybe the Armada wasn't protecting Earth from themselves. Maybe they were protecting Earth from that. This idea spread quickly within the coalition. For the first time, things connected in a meaningful way. The Armada wasn't hovering near Earth because they wanted something. They weren't observing Earth because they saw humans as a danger. They were here because Earth was about to enter a new stage of technology. Humans were getting better at deep space travel, pushing farther each year. And if someday, even accidentally, humans attempted to explore that unstable region of space, it could bring trouble, not just for Earth, but potentially for anything nearby. The Armada wasn't blocking Earth. They were guiding Earth. The coalition held a global briefing to share this theory. People reacted with awe, relief, and a sense of wonder, knowing that the alien fleet might be acting as guardians, not conquerors, changed everything. But there was still one question. How could humans confirm this for sure? The researcher believed the answer was hidden in the deeper layers of the symbol patterns, not yet decoded. After many long nights, one part finally became clear. A small cluster of shapes represented movement, and another cluster represented delay or patience. Together, the meaning was simple. Not now. First understand. The Armada didn't want humans to rush forward. They wanted humans to learn, prepare, and grow before attempting anything as dangerous as exploring that distant region dot with this understanding. Earth planned a new message. It would be the most important message sent so far. The goal was not to ask for help or ask for answers. It was simply to show understanding and gratitude that the message was prepared carefully. It used gentle pulses and shapes matching the Armada's style, showing respect to their method of communication. When the observation ship sent the signal, everyone waited again, but this time with calm hearts. The reply came slowly, like a sunrise. The Armada's central ship glowed in a soft, sweeping wave of light that spread across its surface. The glow repeated twice. Then it paused, and repeated once more. It felt like a gesture of acknowledgement. A peaceful reply. A sign of mutual understanding. Across Earth, millions of people stopped what they were doing to watch the broadcast. They saw the massive alien ship shining softly in the darkness of space, answering humanity with patience and quiet grace. For the first time, humans felt the beginning of something truly new, a friendship not built on words, but on respect and shared understanding. But as everyone celebrated this moment, the researcher noticed something unusual in the latest signal. A small, almost hidden pattern. One that wasn't decoded yet. It repeated 4 times. It wasn't part of the greeting. It wasn't part of the map. It was something else entirely. Something that hinted that the story wasn't over, not even close. The researcher leaned closer to the screen, realizing this new symbol might be the key to everything that would come next. The world had taken its first steps into a much bigger universe, and whatever this next pattern meant, it was about to open another door. The question now, was Simple. Was Earth ready to walk through it?